You're listening to a Pop House Network podcast for developers by developers. Hey everyone, this is the new Java OffHeap 74, recorded at no other than the Roundhouse, the original bar that we used to record these things. Bob, Michael, and Josh were together in person again, whereas I was running around hosting a Seattle Java user group meetup, and has thus just be jealous from afar. Nevertheless, Bob did a great job hosting the episode, and if I don't watch my back, he will do a hostile takeover. Well, at the very least, you get a change of scenery, and who knows? Maybe the next episode that we record, we'll do it all together in person as well. But before we dive into our episode, I wanted to thank our sponsor. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a monitoring and analytics platform that integrates with over 450 technologies, including AWS services, Docker, and Kubernetes. Datadog's platform brings together metrics, traces, and logs in one place so you can get full visibility into your environment and improve your application performance. With machine learning-based alerts, customizable dashboards, and distributed tracing, Datadog makes it easy to unify disparate data sources so you can troubleshoot faster. Start your free Datadog trial today. Listeners of this podcast will receive a free t-shirt once you install the agent and create one dashboard. javaoffheap.com/Datadog to get started. Again, that URL is javaoffheap.com/Datadog to get started. We thank them for sponsoring this episode, and now, let's hear it.
Hi everybody, welcome to Java OffHeap episode 74. Host DevNext. Hi, I'm Bob Paul, and I'll be hosting the show tonight. With me is our usual suspects.
I'm Josh Juno. I'm author, speaker, Jakarta EE and Java EE developer, Oracle DBA, and just love Java.
Hi, I'm Michael Manella, member of the Spring engineering team at VMware, author, speaker, Java champion, curmudgeon at large.
All right, and I'm Bob Paulin, independent consultant, Apache Software Foundation member, CJUG board chair, and speaker. So we're here back at our regular gig at the Roundhouse. So cheers to everybody.
Cheers.
Freddy couldn't be with us tonight because he's too busy doing CJUG meetings, not CJUG as in Chicago Jug, but CJUG as in Seattle Jug. So
because he makes poor life choices.
He does. So Ted Newer was apparently more exciting than we are, but we're going to have a lot more fun tonight without him. So
we love Ted, but
we love Ted. We've had Ted on the show. We've had Freddy on the show several times, maybe. But yeah, you don't choose Ted Neward over Java OffHeap. So, but here we are. We're going to run the news, and we're going to have our normal show, and we're going to have a few brews and have a good time. So why don't we get started on our normal agenda of conferences, because conferences are happening now. So very first on the list is something we talked about last time. Javaone back.
Yes, it is. So Javaone is going to be in Vegas this year, and very little more information at this point, actually. I'm not quite sure when the call for papers is opening up. I've not heard anything about it. So I guess this is a call out to the Java community to try and find out more information about Javaone.
Gerard, if you're listening, we want to know more. People are excited.
Indeed. The one thing we can say is that I know Oracle Cloud World is at Caesar's Palace, right?
Yeah, so according to the Javaone website, it will be alongside Oracle Cloud World, which is at Caesar's Palace in Vegas, October 16th through the 20th. So we've got some dates. We got a vague location, but yeah, we don't have a CFP opening or anything like that. That being said, with it being October for the conference, we're probably getting pretty close to them needing to open up a CFP if they pretty soon. So yeah, like you said, if Shrat's listening, open it up. Let us know.
Yep.
Well, and we'll have to see if they have a replacement for Treasure Island at the at the Vegas location. I'm kind of curious to see what they do there. So many good concerts at Javaone back in the past. So
Oh yeah.
There's lots of options in Vegas.
Lots of options. So we're still looking forward to that. So from my from my end of the woods, Apache Con is coming back as well, October 3rd through the 6th in New Orleans. So the call for talks has just closed as of May 24th. So it just closed. So you just missed it. I haven't heard anything about extending it. So just for attendees now, I did submit a talk to it. See if it gets accepted. Usually does. We'll see. So it's actually about some of the work I'm doing in fundraising. So I don't usually publicize it on the show, but I am the vice president of fundraising at the ASF. So just talking about the different ways people are funding the ASF, the ways people can target specific projects, the ways that, what we're able to do as a 501(c) organization, and just kind of comparing us to other foundations out there that have different formats, like, for example, the Linux Foundation, the Eclipse Foundation, which is, since moved to Europe and has its own kind of format. So just kind of giving folks a lay of the land and hopefully to have an engaging conversation about fundraising.
Sounds good.
So yeah, very different from my usual technical talks that I give there, but I've been on the community track before. It's a good track. People talking about, a lot of the stuff that goes into software that doesn't involve necessarily the technical aspects, but those are the types of things you get at Apache Con. You get talks from people that are actually writing the software, that are PMC members, that are committers on the projects, and then folks that are in the governance models and on the board talking about different things within the foundation. So lots of different things. If you're interested in open source and interested in how the foundation works and interested in the technology, you kind of run the gamut. So check that out. I'm sure I know they're going through rating all of it in selection and all of, they'll probably have the schedule out within the next month or two. So New Orleans in October. Then we go off to Mr. Manila.
Spring one is back, December 6th to the 8th. Call for papers is currently open. So if you have Spring or cloud-related talks you'd like to submit, please do. Spring1.io is the website. It closes June 20th. Registration is currently open, so definitely check that out before all the various clips and whatnot for price increases. So highly recommended. Excited to have it, Spring community back in person in San Francisco, Moscone Center, Moscone West. Be a good time.
Yeah, I should also mention, so Apache Con's also in person, and this year with like Spring One being so far away from Apache Con, I might have to look into making it this year. I have not been there, and I've been doing a lot of spring work recently, so we'll have to see if I can find a way to talk about it.
Good.
Moscone West is a great venue as well.
It is. It's been a while since I've been out to San Francisco. All right, and then Josh, you have the last one.
Yeah, so I had heard about this conference called DevTalks Romania. This is actually a hybrid conference. It's going to be actually taking place in a couple of weeks, so I'm not sure if the show will get out before. Hopefully it will. Online and in person in Bucharest if you want to go out there. And it's being held June 8th through the 10th. It sounds like they've got lots of different tech talk with Java, DevOps, big data, lots of different angles. So different stages for each of these. Sounds like a good conference to attend.
All right, so that wraps up conferences. And I'll just also share, hey, we were at DevNexus. It was the first in-person conference I've been to since all this. It was actually the last one I had been to as well before COVID started. Just really nice seeing people in person again. It was kind of fun going to talks and just kind of getting back to, those hallway conversations with technical people that you just, really haven't had in the last 2 years.
That's, in my opinion, the best part of the conference too, with not actually being in the sessions, but the networking and discussions with others.
Yeah, it's funny how much you miss that, as much as boy, I don't miss the train ride into the office, but I do miss, meeting with other folks in industry talking about similar problems that we're trying to solve. So So yeah, check those out, and we'll continue to get you different conferences that are coming in as they come in. So let's move on to our next segment for the news. So I'll get started. So JDK 18 was released. A couple of the bigger fixes involved the ZGC, which again, if you're not familiar with it, it is the low latency garbage collector for large heap sizes from Oracle that was released by Oracle into the JDK. And some of it's basically just expanding supports, expanding to the Linux Power PC. So you got different platforms, better class unloading. So there were issues related to permgen space where it continued to grow and wouldn't unload classes properly. They fixed some issues with that. And then, other things that are in other garbage collectors, like the string deduplication, which has been in GC1, like the G1 collector for a long time now is also being moved to ZGC. So, you've got a lot of new things to try. So if you've got that large heap and you're looking for low latency collection, checking out ZGC in JDK 18 is a good place to start. It is GA release, so and continues to get better.
Sounds good.
All right.
Quite solid now with JDK 18. And then when did it go GA? It went GA in 17?
I feel like it was like 16 or 17. Yeah, I don't actually remember, because it was preview. It was preview in like 11 or something like that. They backported it in, and that was like the big controversy that they were backporting a garbage collector. And isn't that something too big to be putting in?
We talked about that.
Like in a almost like a patch release.
So now that's my world still is JDK 11 because I'm a Java E, Jakarta E developer, right?
Yep.
We're sorry.
No, not at all. I'm loving it.
I mean, I started, so I'm on 17 with my latest client. So we're doing Java 7. I mean, it's the latest mainline and long-term support edition. So we're starting on it, and it's been pretty seamless. There's really been no real issues with performance monitoring support or anything like that. The syntax is still there from Java 11, hasn't changed terribly much, but I haven't seen a lot of developers using a lot of the new-ish features since 11. Even things that have been around for a while, like var, still not seeing that kind of working into the regular day-to-day yet. But it's there, it's available, just not entirely being used yet. Yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, the performance enhancements and things like that, and just being on the latest thing with all the security patches is enough of a selling point for me. Oh, yeah. So,
excellent.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about JavaDoc, Josh.
JavaDoc. So Billy Coronado, as we all know, is one of the main members of the Java team in Oracle. And he's come out with a nice blog post about the JavaDoc updates. And with this blog post, he kind of goes through some of the changes that we've seen through JDK 11 and through JDK 18. Like I said, I'm on 11 still, so I don't know some of these changes here, but this is a good blog post just to kind of go over quickly. Since JavaDoc is something we kind of always put in the back of our minds, at least I know I do, but it's a very important thing that we should try and make available right away for each of our releases, right? We want to have JavaDoc available so that we can go back ourselves and check out our code, but also so that we can make it easy for others to manage and maintain. Responsive UI is available in JavaDoc now. It's more responsive to different screen resolutions. You have people on phones and whatnot. So it's much better in that way. There are auto-generated links to superclasses and interfaces, which is a nice feature. There's been lots of updates to the index page, including constant field values, serialized form, and system properties. And then one of the things coming in JDK 18 is that they're going to change the system properties page a little bit. So they're still tweaking it. making JavaDoc better with every release. I think that's probably the most important takeaway from this.
All right.
Yeah, responsive design in 2022.
Yay! So I can finally look at my JavaDocs on my mobile phone, and it's not going to suck.
Sure.
Good to hear. Good to hear. All right. So the next update is also Java related. So Loom is coming to JDK 19. So we've talked a little bit about Loom on past episodes, but just the high level overview of what Loom is it's lightweight threads, right? So we've talked about it as potentially the killer to reactive programming, to the kind of the secret sauce that Java is going to get to give us high performance, but also keeping the simplified programming model of a single request, single thread that a lot of our application programming frameworks are built off of. So I know I'm looking forward to this. What's that?
There are some caveats to that, right? So
absolutely.
They've got thread locals working, I believe, like synchronization doesn't.
Yep.
So like it's not a silver bullet. But I do agree that it's exciting to see this finally graduating to a point where it's actually going to really start our peer. It's a preview release in 19?
Yeah, it's on for preview in 19, and specifically the virtual threads. And and that's the central piece of Loom is everything is kind of based on the virtual threads. That's the paradigm that they decided to go with after a couple of iterations. Is that it's basically a thread, but it's really a VM type thread rather than an OS level thread where we can hydrate and rehydrate threads that are paused. So, the idea of having, 1 million threads is possible, right? So rather than it being limited to the OS, which each thread has to have a stack and you've got memory constantly allocated to it, now you don't have those constraints. You have a little bit of churn of being able to hydrate and rehydrate them. So yeah, not a silver bullet, not a free lunch, so to speak. But the idea is to help provide a little bit more of a, if you're a web developer, a Netty-like feel with an MVC, a Java EE type application programming interface where it's, hey, we're putting a thread to a request. So it's like, it's simple.
Well, it's an imperative model.
Yeah.
With that, without it, instead of having to take on the functional model and all that to get the benefits of this, it's an imperative coding style, but with the performance benefits of some of that stuff.
Benefits of it, exactly. And that's a lot of what I'm looking at. So I'm actually playing this. I'm hedging my bet on a lot of my projects right now, where I'm going with. So for example, my Spring Boot projects that I'm working with clients on right now, I'm using MVC with an expectation that we're going to get some of these benefits out of the Loom project in the near future. Not immediately, but the client has got a little bit of time before they're going to be ramped up to that high level performance where they're going to want that. So the idea is, okay, we're going to let the technology catch up with us, and then we'll be ready on MVC model. Michael's smiling at me because their business could blow up, and then I'm going to be in trouble. But I think it's getting close enough where we can start having some expectations around it. There have been a lot of the talks at DevNexus were on Loom. So the speaker circuit is now talking about it. It's something that people are expecting to see. It's preview in 19, which means it's not going to be production ready in 19. But we're going to probably see frameworks start to pick up on some of this stuff at that point, at least in release candidates or in betas and things like that. So we'll get more experimentation. I would not be surprised to see, a Tomcat project picking up virtual threads in the near future once that becomes preview. So yeah, very excited about that. And again, I'm placing bets on it. Whether those bets play out or not, we'll see. But I do have some trust that this is going to be a very, very good thing for the Java platform going forward. I'm excited to see it actually getting in to distribution. All right. So moving on. Josh, do you want to talk a little about Hilla?
Sure. So we have an intro to Hilla, which is a full stack Java framework. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. I honestly haven't heard too much about it yet. I've just learned about it recently, but this is a full stack framework that's based upon Vaadin Fusion. And Hilla combines reactive JavaScript front end with a Spring Java backend for full stack web development. There's a great article about it. We will link to it in the show notes, and this tells you how to build this Hilla application from the beginning. And what it does is it includes a Java backend built with Spring with a TypeScript front end, which is built with Lit, which is a fast reactive framework for JavaScript. And so if you've ever used Vaadin, this is based upon the Vaadin Fusion, which is a unique animal in the Java ecosystem. And the article says it's something akin to Next.js for JavaScript, but with a Spring-based Java backend. So really, if you're into using Spring for your backend, which is most of application development for the enterprise, we should probably take a look at this, because it looks like it's going to give you some really good choices and options for building reactive front ends.
Yeah, we've hosted the Vaadin folks at the CJUG before, and one of the interesting things that this pivots to is Vaadin was always like, it was a backend framework where it was generating the JavaScript, it would render it, and it was like a JSF type build out where you still had, you were basically writing backend code for the front end. This is the first I've looked at Vaadin Fusion, but it's like, looks like even they've kind of gone down the path where it's like, no, we're going to separate these things now. So here's a JavaScript front end that's built for talking to a service backend.
I think it's still intended to be component based, like Vaadin.
Yes.
It's just they separated the technologies a bit so that front end people are more comfortable with the front end tech of JavaScript. The back end people are more comfortable with Spring.
Well, you were writing Java components with Vaadin in the past, right? So you would write a Java class.
Yeah, but the average, let's say, Spring developer or back end developer, that whole component model of writing that in Java has always been a clumsy experience.
Yes, it absolutely has.
And so like that's I think that's the intent here, is to let each person use tools that they're more native or more comfortable using.
Yep. And I mean, the beauty of seeing like JavaScript evolve with TypeScript is now you actually get some type safety. Like, I mean, you're actually using classes, and there's some enforcement by the compiler, which, if you were doing JavaScript development in the last 15 years, you're not used to that. And I know, I'm working on a React project right now where they're using TypeScript for the React project. You don't have to do React and TypeScript. The JavaScript developers are choosing to do this because it gives them some additional safety with what they're doing. Like the compiler is there to help.
Yep.
So, I'm almost wondering if this pivot from the Vaadin community to Fusion and building things out separate in the front end is like, okay, finally the front end has gotten to the point where we've got classes, we've got compile safety, and those were the things that we were trying to get back, putting it into Java. Well, we have that actually in the JavaScript framework now, so why not use it?
And it looks like you can use all of your Vaadin components with this. So if you're familiar with Vaadin, you can just piggyback on that knowledge and pick this up right away and get moving along with it. And if you're not familiar with it, it looks like there are lots of mature components out there that you can get started with.
All right. Well, very good. Looking forward to checking some of that Vaadin stuff out. Since clearly it's been a while since I've looked at some of their stuff. This has really evolved quite a bit from what I looked at in the past. So, very cool.
I've always looked at Vaadin kind of because I'm a JSF guy,
right?
And so I've always kind of looked at it like prime faces, because one does not use JSF without prime faces, is what I've always said, and that's true because. Vaadin, it looks like they've got some really clean components, really easy to use, nice looking components that will be reactive and work very well whether you're working on a phone or if you're working on a desktop or laptop. And that's what I can count on from Prime Faces. So yeah, I like the components.
Yeah, and looking at just kind of the build out of this, like they're showing the Hilla project actually served within a Maven project. So they're showing a front end directory, they're showing HTML and TypeScript directories. So it's like you're still building a Java project,
Yep.
but you have some special directories for rendering the front end code with it. But you're not writing Java to do the front end components anymore. So that's interesting. Yeah, at some point I'll have to do a deep dive and see, how exactly you deploy this, whether it's still just you're deploying the Spring web app and that's rendering the front end and putting up a page and showing the back end, because I think that's the part that I'd be interested in, is where does all of this get served from? So, all right, cool stuff. All right, why don't we move down to the next topic? Speaking of Spring
releases. So we are in the process of doing our next round of releases, and this one I wanted to bring up because we got some interesting stuff coming out. So first of all, Spring for GraphQL. So this is a project we've been working on for probably a year and a half, 2 years now, with the intent of providing GraphQL capabilities from end to end in the portfolio. And so that finally went 1.0. So we've released it, it's GA. Go ahead and check that out. That was picked up by Spring Boot 2.7. So Spring Boot 2.7 came out this month as well. That brings GraphQL in, Spring for GraphQL in. So if you're using Spring Boot 2.7, you can check it out just by adding the dependency. That's all the GA stuff. We also have some stuff that we're working on for release later this year. So we've got Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3. As we probably know, we're doing major generations across the entire portfolio for this year. Those will all be released in November for GA, but Spring Framework 6 M4, Spring Boot M3 came out this month as well. The key addition for Spring Framework 6 M4 is a new AOT processing engine. So as part of our work around native compilation, we have a new AOT engine that generates a bunch of configuration code that simplifies the native compilation capabilities, basically getting us around some of the things that we need to be able to do. Now that provides both an easier path to native compiled applications, but it also provides more performant Java-based applications. So the intention with this AOT engine is that we will provide optimizations both via GraalVM data compilation, but also just running the AOT code on the JVM. So you'll see performance benefits either way. We encourage you to check out both of those, as well as follow along on the journey to the major releases later this year.
Okay, so does the AOT stuff, does it help replace some of the hints and things that you'd have to add manually, or is it other things as well?
Great question. Yeah, so the intent there is to handle a good chunk of the hints. So some of the AOT stuff now is we know how some of the hints work. We can look at your code and figure out, just generate the stuff you need to, as opposed to you and coding hints.
Okay, yeah, no, that's definitely something I'll check out, because I know at least one function project that I work on that we're still dealing with cold start and things like that. And it's always been like, all right, we're trying to release this to essentially novice Java developers, not folks that have the kind of mind to say, oh, I need a hint here and I know which class I need to bring forth in it. So as much as that can be generated is going to make that easier. So definitely have to revisit that. Good. No, good to see that.
Is this all, just a quick question, is this all using JDK 17 now too?
Excellent question. Yeah, so Spring Boot or Spring Framework 6 and the entire release train, the baseline for that will be Java 17.
Okay.
So its baseline is Java 17, Jakarta, namespace, switch, so Jakarta 9. And then the other main themes for us right now are observability across the portfolio and the state of compilation story.
All right. So we just listened to Michael talk a lot, and now we're going to listen to him shut up for a little bit because we're going to be talking about it. I guess you could call it a rumor.
About me. You're talking about
We're just going to talk about you instead, right? Because there's a rumor out there, and there's been a lot of rumors in tech and consolidation over the last couple of years. We've been talking about it on the show, but VMware is being rumored to be in conversations with Broadcom about a potential buyout. So, that to me is very interesting because you look at Broadcom, they're a chip company. It's almost the same kind of like, okay, VMware is a virtualization company, which again doesn't directly have anything to do with Spring, but it's like they're companies picking up other software companies to kind of fit with their portfolio, maybe cross-sell a little bit.
Sure.
And this is another one that just kind of struck me. It's like, are we becoming like almost like we're seeing like the Philip Morris of software companies now, where it's like we're diversifying into a bunch of different things because we don't know if there's going to be another chip shortage, so we're going to get into software. Oh, we're heavy into virtualization, but we also want to have software that runs in the cloud that's very popular, and we're just trying to like build these conglomerates to make tech a little bit more recession-proof. And I guess maybe that's part of the interest here. But I mean, the biggest.
Can we go with a Berkshire Hathaway as opposed to Philip Morris? like just a little less.
A little bit more friendly conglomerate.
I thought about the Marlboro man right away when you said that.
Well, it's like, what do you think?
Really lying to the public for years. And
when you think about Philip Morris, they own Kraft, like a bunch of stuff that you would never have put together, and that's the association. But yeah, Berkshire Hathaway, hey, we own railroads and we own oil companies and we own, it's kind of a similar idea. Basically, tech conglomerates. The thing that I guess that I worry about when I look at a Broadcom, which also owns like a bunch of like computer associate portfolios, is just kind of the mantra of these companies that are buying up other companies. It's like, are they going to continue the innovation at those companies? Or are they going to look at it as, hey, we're buying another cash cow, where it's all about the, what it's producing now, and, are they going to keep essentially like kind of those edge projects where it may not have a direct tie to the profit, but obviously a lot of technology companies are dependent on it and is potentially bringing in business through indirect means. Like to say, well, okay, we're interested in working with you because you're building integrations into, products that are similar or in that ecosystem.
I don't know. I think Broadcom just has a Spring Boot based application, for their webpage, and that's why.
Yeah, they're just trying to buy support, right? That's just the cheapest way to do it, is just to buy you guys out.
If that's the case, Broadcom, the rumors right now are 60 billion. Broadcom, I'll do it for 30. just throwing it out there. 30 billion. I will support your
deal. Should take it, Broadcom. The interesting thing that I saw was that this mentioned the VMware acquisition would just about triple the size of Broadcom's software segment, as well as bring the overall software mix close to 50% for the combined company. So they must have quite a software segment already. So when they bring on, they work to bring on VMware. It seems like they're definitely eyeing a different pool for something. Trying to kind of, like you said, not put all their eggs in one basket with the chips, but trying to go with more of the software edge as well.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it's a diversification play. Other companies have kind of gone down that path, but yeah, I mean, it's funny because they're probably looking at it for, the VMware piece, virtualization, but like to somebody that works with a lot of open source, my biggest thing is, well, what's going to happen to Spring? Like what is Broadcom's interest in Spring? And they do have a Java angle with a lot of their CA stuff, like through APM. Like if you Google a bunch of stuff they work on, like they do have some partnerships with Oracle on certain things. So it's not like they're completely oblivious to Java. Like they do have some tie-ins there already, where they have some interest in making sure the ecosystem, continues to improve and maintains. But yeah, it still kind of comes to the question of, it's like, well, is that why they're buying VMware? Are they buying VMware just for virtualization? So we shall see.
Question. And it kind of reminds me of 3-4 years ago when Microsoft started to get into Java again. We really had to wonder why were they getting into Java, investing in it so much? But now, hindsight, they really have invested in it.
Yes,
they are a major player in the Java Java community now. And so, hey, if Broadcom wants to do that and they have interest in this, the Spring as well as with VMware, yeah, have at it. That'd be great to get another company in there to back Java, a big company like Broadcom,
Yeah. And Spring has been very resilient. It seems like, you start at, I remember back to Spring Source. I'm sure there was stuff before that. Spring Source.
Interface 21.
Yeah. You there you go. You've got, it's a pivotal.
So it was Interface 21, Spring Source, purchased by VMware.
VMware first.
Spun out to
Pivotal.
Brought back to VMware. VMware was then spun off of Dell for 3MC.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
And now there's the Broadcom rumors.
Yeah.
I think that just goes to show. And if you look at like I had mentioned earlier in the segment here, if you look at the Java community and you look at Java Enterprise, so many people have staked in Spring. It's fine. So if anybody's reading this article and thinking Broadcom, oh no, what's going to happen with Spring? Spring's not going anywhere. Spring is great. Spring is probably going to grow stronger if something were to happen with this. But there's such a big investment in Spring that, it's very resilient, and no matter where it lands, it's going to be great, I think.
Yeah. Now, we'll have to.
So the only two things I would want to add to the conversation are, number one, I can't wait to actually really talk about this publicly. And number two, just from a complete anecdotal note, if you asked me if VMware was to land with a chip company, who would it be? Hello, our old CEO is the CEO of Intel. So, kind of weird.
Might be something to that.
Sure.
Yeah. We'll keep an eye on this. Again, I'm sure we'll know more probably by the next episode, and we'll talk through it and see where it goes.
From a timing perspective, VMware's quarterly report call with the analysts is actually the day after this recording.
Okay.
So we'll find out in news.
We may be eating our words in a few days before it even gets cut.
Sure.
All right. All right. So Project Leyden, Josh, you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure. So there was a recent blog post from none other than the famous Mark Reinhold from the JVM architect group. And speaking about Project Leyden, if you've not heard about this, the ultimate goal, I'm going to read it straight from the blog post. See, I couldn't do it any better than he did. The ultimate goal of this project, as stated in the call for discussion, is to address the long-term pain points of Java slow startup time, the slow time to peak performance, and a large footprint. Basically, in here, he's looking for a call on discussing this to find out exactly what we should do with these proposals. In this blog post, he mentions that in the call for discussion, he proposed that we address the pain points by introducing a concept of static runtime images to the Java platform and to the JDK. And then he goes on to say that a static image is a standalone program derived from an application and the JDK, which runs that application and no other. A static image is a closed world with respect to the classes that it can load. At runtime, it cannot load classes from outside the image, nor can it create classes dynamically. And then it goes on to discuss more about, this project and the different concepts that they're thinking of proposing for Project Leyden. So I guess in summary, what we should do is take a look at this post. And if you're interested in learning more about Project Leyden or getting involved, this is a great way to do it by just kind of jumping into the discussion and, mention some of your ideas, what you think should go into this project. That's very early, I think. I don't think there have been any cuts of Leyden yet, right? This is all talk at this point. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I'm reading Mark's article right now as we're going the call for discussion, which is on the JDK mailing list. Looks like it started in late April. So this is been baking for about a month as far as the mailing list is concerned.
Sure.
And I mean, the first thought that came to my mind is, well, isn't this the problem Graal is solving? And yes, the answer is yes, it is. He mentions in his post. Go ahead.
I'll say there's a catch, which is that Graal is a commercial offering, open source as well, but is outside of Java.
Right.
This is intended to be Java. My understanding is that there's at least intention for them to work together. I don't know what progress that's had up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Mark's angle on this, especially when he talks about static runtime images, is going back to his work on the module system, where, and he even mentions JLink in his post, where he's talking about, well, with JLink, the module system essentially creates a VM with the modules that you need. But at the end of the day, it's still a VM, right? So there's still startup time implications. There's still class loading implications. There's still dynamics to it within what modules you've loaded. This is basically kind of combining that with Graal and saying, well, it's going to be a static runtime image, whereas you're going down to a binary. I mean, that's what Graal is, right? You get a program out of it.
Graal's native compilation capabilities.
Yes.
There is a Graal VM as well.
That's not what he's talking about here, though.
Right. I mean, he specifically calls out the native compilation capabilities.
But yeah, this feels like Mark's attempt to marry his work with the module system into Graal as a way of maybe it's specifying what the dependencies are and things like that, because a lot of the pain points of Graal is once you start bringing in a lot of dependencies, if those dependencies aren't built for Graal, or you need to there's dynamic things being done in them, reflection, you kind of gotta, I don't know, I'm going to use a JavaScript term, monkey patch them so that they work.
Well, there's technical limitations, right? And so you need to work around them. Graal is not a complete, Graal's native compilation is not a complete Java implementation.
Yeah.
There are things that Java lets you do that Graal doesn't support yet.
Correct.
And so because of that, you do end up having to work around them. Now, whether that's through monkey patching, whether that's through AOT engines and transformations that way, whether it's just changing your underlying code, any of those are options.
Yeah, and I mean, the other question is, why now? And I mean, to answer that by, some of the projects that I've been working on recently, a lot of projects I feel are getting pushed to, well, why can't we do this in functions? And, for teams that are very well versed in Java, it's like, well, you can, but it's going to be slower because of the startup time constraints. There is a way to work around it right now with Graal if you want to work through that. But then you've also got to have a more experienced team. You've got to be aware of those, and you got to know kind of the tools of the trade of building something for native compile. If it were to work more out of the box and you were to say, hey, the VM is going to do more for you, or the compiler is going to do more for you, you don't have to think about that stuff, and you can lower the bar, then to me, this is an interesting project. If this is,
I don't see functions as the main driver for this.
Okay.
I think functions is a nice bonus, but for me, when I look at the performance benefits of a natively compiled application over Java VM, when you look at cloud computing, when you look at the cost aspect of it, if I can run the same workload in on a machine size that's half the size with half the memory footprint.
Okay.
When we talk about cloud density, the density of workloads within a given cloud, that's where I feel that this will be a big adoption. Functions will, I agree, it enables that as a workload option, but I think where the mass adoption will be is our traditional applications just really improving density. Because what I look at it as, I'm a big company, insert any company here like major bank or whatever.
Yep.
They've got thousands of instances of applications, right? When accounting can find out that we can run the same number of instances, same throughput, in half the size, just by changing our compiling infrastructure, you're going to get a command down on high pretty darn quick.
Okay, so memory footprint. So, and I mean, that is a big component of cloud build outs because, I mean, whether you're talking about functions or you're talking about long running applications, memory is typically one of the higher cost things in the cloud. There's CPU and memory are the two higher ones. Storage, yeah, storage is still dirt cheap, but.
And the way Java works is it's very specific in that if it ever claims that memory, it never gives it back.
Right, right.
So if you need a gig to start up, and then you only need 100 megs to run, you need to run at the gig.
Yep.
And so native compilation is another way around that problem.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, you get to optimize out the class loading that is based on compile, not going to be needed.
You move all that work to compile time as opposed to startup time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's funny how it's come full circle where on early projects that I worked on had a significant amount of code gen. So the only time you had a build that was more than a minute or so is because you're generating a bunch of code, you're doing a bunch of IO, and then compiling it.
Yep.
Now, the native compilation thing, it's like you start hearing the fans running and things like that while you're compiling that native code. But at the end of the day, you end up with that nice compact binary, which starts up very fast and does not consume significant amounts of memory. So, I mean, I am working on a project right now in functions where, hey, the difference between having 300 megs of memory and 512 is several $100s per function per month.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's worth it.
Do the math. That goes.
It's worth it.
And so when we look like what Spring's working on and what VMware's working on in this space, we want to be able to get to a point where you can build your app locally using your existing tools. So using Spring, using your existing stack, using Spring Dev tools for hot reload and all that kind of stuff, and actually commoditize that deployment style, if you will. So you can run it locally on the JVM, and then as part of your CI process, is where you take the hit on the native compilation. It'll still run all your tests, as long as they'll pass. You never have to worry about the fans pulling up locally.
Yeah.
Because you never have to take that hit and prove that it works that way locally.
That's just for shipping it.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. So another space to keep your eye on. We'll see what they can achieve above and beyond what Growl is doing, because I think that's going to be table stakes for this. Is you've got to kind of exceed what they've already been able to do there and make it cohesive. Very early, so we'll see where that goes. All right, Josh, you want to talk about Kotlin?
Sure. So Kotlin 1.7.0 beta is released, and this is the first preview of 1.7.0. It's introducing a couple of highlights. There'll be changes to the builder interface, changes to builder inference, the return of min and max collection functions, stabilizing of definitely non-nullable types, and updates for the new Kotlin native memory manager. And it's important also to note that they're changing the terminology, starting with 1.7.0. updating the cadence terminology by changing milestone to beta. And there's they in the blog post that we will link to, they go throughout the reasons for that. But I think it's just important to note that there are going to be some good size changes in 1.7.0, and it's probably definitely worth looking into. Matching with regex at a particular position, new, like I mentioned before, native memory manager, support for named capturing groups in JavaScript and native, and much more. So this is out there now. It's available. If you go to the JetBrains blog post, you can download it and get started with it.
All right. So Kotlin developers, check that out. All right, and our last item comes from our reactive front at Lightbend. So Michael, I want to talk a little bit about Kalix.
Yeah, so Kalix is a new offering by Lightbend. It's built on Akka. The subtitle here, if you will, from their website, high performance microservices and APIs with no operations required.
None.
And that's exactly.
So we can fire them all, right?
Exactly. So this is a new framework from Lightbend, but it's built, I don't know it's built on, but it is intended to be run on their PaaS as well.
Yeah.
So the platform as a service. The idea being that it is completely managed by them. And so it feels very much like a walled garden, if you will, in that here's your framework, here's your platform, here's everything. I'll be honest with you, I will be blunt, I'm very skeptical on these zero operations required. Like that's a really impressive claim to pull off.
Yeah.
Especially when you have Kubernetes there on the infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, it's unless Lightbend has become an infrastructure company and they've got every one of their developers has become ops people maintaining this stuff at any real scale.
I don't know. They're saying on the website that instead of spending 80% of their time just dealing with things that have nothing to do with the problem they're trying to solve, now with Kalix, they're spending all the time on the business problem.
No disrespect to James Ward, but he is a developer advocate.
You never know.
He is incentivized to sell.
That is very intriguing, though. It makes me want to go and look at it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting.
It's also very new.
It's very new. They've obviously got they show it being self-hosted. So it's like, yeah, you can try to do this all yourself, but why not let us do it for you is obviously the play here. I've seen a couple of different architectures, based on Akka, and play applications has been probably the most popular way I've seen that come out. And one of the more difficult things has not been the operations side, to be perfectly honest. Like, if you're deploying a play app, you're just running a Java application at the end of the day. And if you know how to do that, you're good from an operations perspective. So I'm curious, that they think hey, the thing to solve is the operations side. So I can just have to worry about writing reactive code, because whenever I had to write reactive code, that's all I've been able to focus on anyways. Because
that's the hard part of it.
That is the hard part of it, is writing the reactive code. So I'm curious to see if they've got anything to make that easier. Because again, I've already put my chips on the table that I'm betting on Loom as far as I'm going to get high performance out of a one thread per request model. But yeah, I guess, another thing to look at.
So, I mean, it sounds based on their, it's interesting. On one hand, they say it's a platform as a service, but they explicitly call out that it's serverless, which is it's interesting.
It is interesting. And the other thing I would like to point out, though, is that just because we're talking about this, that doesn't mean you can go and just start using it for free. This does have pricing involved with it.
So there's a start for free.
Yes, you can start for free.
Yeah, it's a really low I don't even know what RPS stands for.
Request per second.
Oh yeah, okay. So 100 limited.
Okay, so they rate limit you essentially. 100 requests per second that's enough to do a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's enough especially to try it out.
Yeah.
And even the prices aren't crazy. I mean, CPU is 12 cents per CPU hour. RAM is just over 3 cents per gigabyte hour. Like, these are reasonable prices, especially to try things out.
Yeah, so definitely, like you were mentioning, kind of like platform as a service type. You're paying for this.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I find the really interesting part here is the fact that it's the framework and the patch. Yeah. It's not bring whatever you are comfortable with. It's not even bring your Akka play. It's a new framework.
Yeah.
So the adoption rate, I just feel, is going to be. I think it's not the best strategy.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to keep an eye on that. I mean, I've got to look through a lot more of the documentation before I get a sense of it.
Right.
But yeah, anything that requires me to buy something to run on or even run on for free, I get skeptical. So.
I mean, even beyond even if I made you pay for the platform, if I made you switch your framework to do so,
that's a cost. Yeah.
Probably a bigger cost than anything I'm going to charge for the platform.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's still, developer time is still very expensive, and it's only gotten more pricey with where labor is right now. So, well, we'll have to keep an eye on that. But I do also want to get to our discussion topic. So, Josh, you posted this in there, and I love the title you put in because it's Java. Is Java popularity declining? Which is a perfect topic for this show.
I probably kind of messed that up.
Doom.
The actual title to the article was Oracle Java Popularity Sliding. So, and then if you read on, it says it's talking about the Oracle JDK itself. It's saying that the Oracle JDK, which is what it should have said, I think, as the title, has fallen to just 34% of Java distributions in use, with Amazon rising to 22%, according to the new RUG 2022 State of the Java Ecosystem report. So basically what they're saying is that people using the Oracle JDK, it's kind of declining a little bit. More people are starting to branch out and use these other distributions.
Yeah, I guess I don't find that shocking. So, I mean, when I look at a lot of my client work that I've been doing recently, Oracle kind of has their terms set out, for each new release, we're going to support it for the 3 months that's the current release. And then if for an LTS, we'll support that for 3 months, but we'll also allow you to pay for support and get it for longer if you want to. Well, there's so many more JDK distributions out there where a lot of companies are building the open JDK version, applying all the patches and doing that for free. That for most of my client projects, I'm using Azul's Docker container as kind of my base image and just upgrading with them as they've patched. The same could be said on AWS if I want to use Amazon's distribution just to be compatible. Yep. Corretto to be compatible with, what they're running in either functions or just in general, just to have a standard across the board. Like I use Corretto. I mean, Corretto is Java with some security patches. And I mean, that's, if I'm using 8 or 11, that's really what I need at that point. I'm not looking for new features. I'm just looking to make sure they're secure.
And I personally think that's kind of where this model is going to go, is, for lack of a better way, a race to the bottom. This is going to, Java support is going to be less of a revenue generator and more of a checkbox that you need as table stakes as you provide a platform. Because companies are going to be more and more looking for a platform, whether it be public cloud or private cloud. They're going to be looking for, they're not going to be running VMs, raw VMs anymore, right? They're going to use something else to orchestrate images of some kind. And whatever that platform is, support for Java is just going to be one of those checkboxes that is part of the deal you just have to have. And so everybody's got their own the cost angle of this is going to, like I said, I think it's just going to be race to zero for everybody. And I think that's what hurt Oracle right now is the fact that it took them a while to realize it. I think they when they bought something, they thought they had something with that was actually a moneymaker. It's not. It's a developer, and it's a way of driving consumption of other things. It by itself is not going to make money.
Yeah, I think the article specifically calls out that back in 2020, Oracle had roughly 75% of the market. Now it's down to just 34.48 in 2022, and not far behind is Amazon. The others that are following, like Bob had mentioned, I use Azul as well, Zulu. That's only actually got 8.17% of the market. Red Hat's got a distribution. There's Ice-T, there's Ubuntu, Bellsoft, Eclipse Adoptium. There's plenty of other different JDK releases out there. And I can remember having this discussion a few years ago on this podcast when they first started to, we were talking about, man, this is really the day that we're finally seeing Java open sourced,
Right.
All these other builds. This is a great thing. And now we look at it, Oracle's no longer the top dog out there with the JDKs.
Yeah, as far as usage, I'm a little interested in these numbers. I mean, I guess I'm just trying in my head to think of where I put these numbers, but the fact that Eclipse Adoptium is right behind Amazon, that surprises me a little bit.
Why?
I would have thought Azul would be behind Amazon. I really like, the Adopt Open JDK project has been very popular. And obviously it hasn't dropped off terribly, I think, now that it's moved to Eclipse. But, I kind of thought the Azul brand would, and having Zulu having been around for as long as it was, and having the TCK support, which Eclipse Adoptium I don't think offers, because they don't run it against the TCK. It's kind of showing maybe that doesn't play into this calculus.
I don't think it does. Although it'd be interesting to find out. So in that article, did it say in general or in production?
So the data comes from New Relic. So I know most of my customers that use New Relic, they use New Relic across the board for development environments as well as production. And seeing that the article doesn't explicitly say production environments leads me to believe that they're probably not filtering on that.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting is I would expect production to be supported, commercial, they're cutting somebody a check. Whereas developer boxes, developer environments, you can be a little more loosey-goosey with regard to it because it is all Java, right? I mean, it's so different than when we built on Tomcat and deployed a website, right?
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I still haven't seen that yet. So the idea that I would use a non-supported version on a development box, but then move to, a paid license on the production box. My experience is companies want the security of that. I tested on this JDK when I released, it was on the same one that I tested on, more than having the paid support, the indemnification that comes with having a contract.
Okay.
Just the consistency to say that, hey, QA signed off on this. I'm not going to change the runtime going to prod because, I know most of the people at this table know that the JDK is probably going to be exactly the same, but most companies don't think like that. It's like your dev, your prod, and your everything should be the same just to make sure it's consistent.
That makes sense.
There's products out there, obviously, that may have stipulations say, hey, this must be used with the Oracle JDK.
Yep. Or other JDK.
Or other JDK, or that you're paying for. But, in most of those cases, the licensing terms allow you to use it in dev, as long as you're paying for it in production, or that product company has a relationship with Oracle in production, or whatever company, like you get it for free in dev. So the whole like, hey, we're going to do it for free in dev and then we're going to pay for it in product. I haven't seen that in the real, the quote unquote real world.
And maybe that isn't a thing anymore. I was just trying to pull up the list of JDK installs in for Homebrew. And
yeah, that could be a whole different stat. Like what people use locally, that I can see still.
It's a long list.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I remember when I started using Brew, it was 84 kind of thing.
Yeah,
it wasn't a lot. Now you actually have to page through it. It is insane how many distributions and how many versions of Java there are.
I mean, I use SDK Man when I'm on a Mac, and like, yeah, you have a dozen different flavors to choose from, and a dozen versions within each of those flavors. So it's. And I guess the other interesting thing to bring up is, one of the things that was the huge concern if we ever went to this model. Like, so I remember talking to Gil Tenney from Azul Systems of, well, what would have happened if they would have gone with the Apache license, or they would have gone with a more liberal license, or if Oracle wasn't as strong on, the copyright and making sure that only they were the ones building it. Well, the ecosystem was fragment. The one thing that I guess I almost feel confident saying, like 5 years later, we haven't seen the type of fragmentation where, we moved from Oracle to Amazon and shit broke.
Yeah.
Like I don't hear stuff like that out in the wild. Like if I switch from Eclipse Adoptium to Azul to Amazon, it still works.
Most people have viewed this as, we're going to distribute somebody else's software. Each of these companies don't view this as their own product. Like Amazon Pareto, Amazon doesn't view this as their own thing to evolve. IBM doesn't view theirs as their own thing to evolve. It's we need that checkbox on the platform. So we're going to hire enough people to guarantee that. But we are going to invest at a level where we can evolve it. And that's where the fragmentation would happen.
Yeah.
That's what happened with app servers.
Yeah.
I mean, the app servers, the whole idea with Jakarta, right? In Java EE was specs, everything's the same. You can go from one to the next to the next. But then you saw like WebSphere adding additional functionality, EA adding additional functionality. And if you consume any of that, you get stuck.
Yep, you're no longer.
You don't get that interop anymore.
Exactly.
And we haven't seen that with Java. We haven't seen that level of investment in JDKs that happened at the app server level. The app server, each one of those companies viewed those as their own independent product that they were going to evolve and move. And so that's what caused that fragmentation.
Yep.
Yeah. No, you haven't seen a company, for example, say, hey, we're at Amazon going to hire a bunch of PhDs and release Loom early. Like, that's not what's happening right now. You have seen, hey, we're going to create Firecracker and do some VM start and stop things to try to help performance, but that's outside of the Java. That's below it. That's at the OS type level.
Graal's probably the biggest shift like that.
Yeah.
The Graal VM is probably the biggest thing, and they openly admit like this isn't Java. This is close, but it technically isn't TCK Java.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean it'll be interesting to see if that continues, because again, when you talk to people in the I guess everybody runs their own runtime world. That was the big concern. We're I want to say we're 5 years into this experiment. It hasn't happened yet. Like, I wonder how long we need to wait until we're saying, hey, this is just not going to happen. Because I think we're getting close to that, where it's like, you know what, a lot of this stuff that people were worried about, maybe it's not something we need to worry about.
Yep.
I'm personally not. I really think that this is a race to, like I said, a race to the bottom. I really think this is Java is going to be table stakes that you need to be able to provide to be a realistic platform provider.
Yep.
and there's no financial benefit in me saying my Java is better than your Java.
Right.
Like, that's not that. People aren't going to switch platforms for that.
It's still Guno with class path exception. If you do that, it's still open sourced. So what's going to stop anybody from taking that?
Right.
Oh, maybe that's the strength behind it is, again, the license that they have, the copyleft license allows them to say, well, look, you want to push ahead? Go right ahead. But you're contributing back to our ecosystem with that because we have a legal obligation to do that. So
real quick, I just wanted to mention a couple of other things from the report that I thought were really interesting. Java 11 has become the most commonly used Java version, which I think we all kind of know. The long-term support release was published in 2018. It's now used by more than 48% of applications that are in production, up from 11.11% in 2020. Java 8 is second used, of course, still. Only 2.7% of applications in production use non-LTS versions, which I think is probably good.
Yeah.
But I think we kind of all knew that. 70% of the Java applications reported in New Relic do so from a container. So they're running containers and Docker or whatever. G1 is the favorite garbage collector for those who have left Java 8.
Yeah.
I was really happy to see the decrease in Java 8.
Yeah.
Java 8 has been in the conversations I've been having, it's been the feared Java 6 that everybody is going to stay on forever. And even when you look at all these various options for support, that is one that you keep seeing over and over as an option for free support for a very long time.
Oh, yeah.
So that's always in the back of our mind is like, is this going to be, are we stuck with Java 8 for, essentially another decade?
I still think
that decrease makes me feel really good that we won't.
Mm-hmm.
I still think people are scared of modules. I think that was the big cliff right there. You're jumping off the cliff after Java 8, going into modules. But I don't think if people would just take a look at JDK 11, I think that they would see it's not really that big of a jump.
Yeah. And the other thing, 70% of Java applications are running in a container. The other thing that people like to say is, well, Docker is going to kill Java because, I can run whatever language runtime I want in there. Like, it's all Linux anyways. So what do I need Java for?
That's not how the real world works.
It's not how the real world works. Is right. No, it's fun kind of looking back at what people have speculated on and said, and maybe I'll be eating my words on the whole reactive is not going to be a thing anymore once we get Loom. But like,
we are recording this.
We are recording this, so we'll be able to do that 5 years from now. But yeah, 70% of Java is absolutely a top technology to be using in containers. There's limitations with functions with startup time that I think folks are well aware of, but just putting it in a long-running Docker container, not a problem. Very much recommended. So good to see that. So, at the end of the day, it is clickbait to say is Java decreasing. I think it's really this entire ecosystem where we're talking about a bunch of companies releasing Java. It's been nothing but positive thus far. A lot of the concerns that people haven't come to fruition. We're seeing great adopting of newer JDKs in this model. We're not seeing breaking changes. We're not seeing fragmentation. So
I would argue that from a broader Java ecosystem perspective, in overall investment in Java as a platform is on the rise.
Yes.
Money may be shifting from application servers to other Java distributions and the Brawl stuff and things like that. But I think overall, I think the investment of Java as a runtime is on the rise. I'm excited about where it's at.
Yeah.
Where it's going.
Yeah.
No, sure. Looking forward to it. I'm not planning on.
We're biased at all.
No, not at all.
I'm not going to learn any C# tonight. I'm just going to stick with Java.
All right. Well, I think at that, I think we can close out our show. Again, we are all here. We miss Freddy, but Freddy decided he wanted to hang out with Ted more than us, so he missed out on our.
He makes poor life decisions. No offense. No offense.
Maybe one day he'll learn. Like we're gonna, enjoy our drinks and be here in person in the Roundhouse here in Chicago. Cheers.
It's empty now.
All right.
Cheers.
This is Bob signing off.
Josh signing off.
Michael signing off. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you're on Twitter, be sure to follow us at OffHeap.
All right. Happy programming, everyone.